9 o'clock. Again, good morning. I'm Tom Bailey, Chair of the El Paso County Planning Commission. I'll call our September 5th meeting to order. And thanks for coming out on a rainy day. Be interested to hear why there's so many people in the audience, but we'll come to that. We'll come to that a little bit later. I shuffle my papers here, make sure I'm in order. I'm going to first introduce the voting members for today's hearing. To my right, we have Ms. Jack. We have Mr. Whitney. We have Mr. Markowicz. On my left, we have Mr. Trowbridge. We have Mr. Carlson. We have Mr. Shipples, and we have Mr. Smith. So we have enough. We have a quorum. We can conduct business, and we will do that. I know there are a few conflicts later in the morning, but hopefully we'll get out of here before then. Our first item is report items from the Planning Department. Ms. Harrington.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Megan Harrington, Planning Director. The only item that I would update you on this morning is that we will have at the end a non-action item, which is the report on the implementation of the master plan. And also that the Land Development Code website, project website, is live. You can link to that off of the Planning and Community Development webpage from the El Paso County website. And there is sorry, that threw me off. There is the assessment of the code from what the consultant performed an assessment, and it is a document that goes over their recommendations for items that can be changed and updated, and that document is online for you to comment on, as well as the public can comment on that as well. And so I just really wanted to put in a shameless plug for going to the project website, checking it out, giving us your input on the documents that are there to date. So thank you. I would ask Justin if he has anything to add.
Thank you. Mr. Kilgore.
No, she stole my thunder today. Sorry.
Okay. Well, it's not just for us to go on there and check things out, but the public too. This is an open process, and we want as much input on changes to the Land Development Code as we can get. So if you're interested enough to be here today, maybe you'd be interested enough to take a look at some of that and give your feedback to the county and our consultant. Thank you. Next, we have time for public comments on items that are not on our agenda. Is there anyone here who's come just to speak on something that's not on today's agenda? I don't see anyone, and I'll try to remember to ask. Do we have anybody online listening that may want to say anything? See anybody? And the voice from the back isn't telling me we do, so we will move on to our consent items. First item is the adoption of our minutes from our hearing held on August 15th. We all had a chance to read those. Are there any corrections or additions or corrections for corrections twice for any of that? Commissioners, we're all okay. Seeing no comments, we will deem those approved as presented. And we'll move on to item 3B, file number MS-235. This is the final plat for Double Spur Ranch. Is there anyone in the audience other than the applicant or the representative here for that item? What I'll try to do is get a sense for what topics you're interested in, because otherwise our consent items go through with very little discussion. So nobody's here for that item. Commissioners, are there any questions for staff or other questions on that? Seeing none, I'll open the floor to and entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Shipples.
With regards to agenda item 3B, file MS-235 for project of the final plat, Double Spur Ranch final plat. I move for approval in accordance with the attached resolution with 10 conditions, 1 notation, and 1 waiver, and with the finding of sufficiency of water quality, quantity, and dependability, that this item be forwarded to the Board of County Commissioners for their consideration.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Trowbridge, thank you very much. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Mr. Markowitz.
Aye.
Mr. Whitney. Aye. Ms. Jack.
Aye.
Mr. Trowbridge.
Aye.
Mr. Carlson.
Aye.
Mr. Shipples.
Aye.
And Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Chair also votes aye. Will recommend this unanimously to the Board of County Commissioners for their approval. It's that easy unless somebody else wants to hear more or talk about something like that. So that's most of our agenda today will flow just like this. So please make sure you get my attention if there's something that, if we come to an item that you're interested in and want to discuss. Moving on then, file number, or agenda item 3C, file VA 245, a variance of use for 8304 and 8308 Cessna Drive. Commissioners, any questions for staff on this? Is there anyone in the audience who has, other than the applicant, who's interested in this? I see some people that do. Okay, I guess let me get a quick sense for what your concerns are, what your issues are, and we'll go forward. What I'm trying to find out is if we need to do a full presentation or just there's a couple, if you're here to support or to oppose this, and we can kind of narrow down what the issues are. So I'm going to go ahead and do that until somebody tells me I can't. Sir, why don't you come up here, please? If you do come up and speak, if you can use the microphone and make sure that you're signed in. If you have comments on this, that I need to know that. If you're just here because you're interested and want to find out what's going to happen, I need to know that too. So, sir, do you have anything specific or not? Okay. Yeah, either of the microphones work, but you're, can you give us a little more specificity on your opposition?
You want my name and stuff?
Please.
Okay, my name is Clement Howard Silvers Jr. I go by Bud. I've been a pilot for 52 years. I own, my wife and I own Hangar A9 in the Falcon Hangars development on Menelec. I've a lot of experience with cars and airplanes, and the general public seems to believe that Cessna Drive is a road. It's actually a taxiway, and there's a significant difference. The difference being that airplanes have absolute right-of-way. I've owned 10 tail dragger antique airplanes. Tail draggers, and in case you don't really understand, airplanes have either a nose wheel that you steer the airplane with. Those airplanes tend to be pretty much like cars. They've got a windshield in front of you. A tail dragger, on the other hand, the nose of the airplane blocks your view of the road ahead. The only way you can safely taxi a tail dragger is by doing S-turns and getting a glimpse here and a glimpse here and so forth. The general public does not understand that. And not understanding that, somebody can drive a car and stop right in front of you, and you can't see them. If you can't see them, there's potential for an accident.
Let me just stop you there. Is there anything specific about this particular application other than the environment or the place where it is and the street has traffic issues? Is there anything specific on this one, or?
Generally speaking, my opposition is because of safety.
Okay,
The general public does not understand.
okay.
That's basically it.
Thank you. We may come back and call you back for some more conversation. Mr. Whitney?
Mr. Chair, could I just ask this gentleman just a couple of quick questions? Sir,
I think our package says that there was a prior code violation in which this, although it was originally restricted to hangar use, was used for a vehicle repair garage. So whatever happens today, what my interest is, you've explained what could happen. Is there a record of such accidents on that taxiway, or is this just a general concern of yours?
Mr. Whitney, I'm going to stop you there and we'll pull this and come back to it.
Okay,
I just think
thank you.
I think we've strayed much too far already. Thank you for your indulgence, but we'll come back. So thank you. We're going to pull this item, move it down a little bit later, and then we'll hear your comments as well. I think that question is more appropriately asked to the applicant for those, for that background.
Thanks, Mr.
Rather than just
Yep.
putting somebody on the spot, but we'll try to address that concern here in a few minutes. So we'll move on to agenda item 3D, file number SP 217. This is a preliminary plan for Peerless Farms. Is there anyone in the audience other than the applicant here for that one? I don't see anybody. Commissioners, does anyone have any questions or concerns about this item that staff can address quickly? No?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Markowitz.
In regards to agenda item 3D, file number SP 217 for preliminary plan Peerless Farms, I move for approval in accordance with the attached resolution with one condition, two notations. No, I'm sorry, 5 conditions, 3 notations, 1 waiver, and a recommended finding for sufficiency with regard to water quality, and dependability, and that this should be forwarded to the Board of County Commissioners for consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Markowitz.
Second.
Mr. Smith seconds. Thank you. Any last questions or discussion? Seeing none, we'll start the other way. Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Shipples,
Aye.
Mr. Carlson,
Aye.
Mr. Trowbridge,
Aye.
Ms. Jack,
Aye.
Mr. Whitney,
Aye.
and Mr. Markowitz. The chair also votes in favor, so we will again unanimously recommend approval for file number SP 217. Moving on to agenda item 3E, file CS 243, a map amendment rezone for Udon. Pronounce that right. Is there anyone in the audience other than the applicant here for that item? See anyone? Commissioners, any questions or concerns about this item? Then entertain a motion on this. Mr. Trowbridge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As regards agenda item 3E, file number CS 243, a map amendment rezone for UDON, I move for approval in accordance with the attached resolution with a finding of 2 conditions and 2 notations, and that this item be forwarded to the Board of County Commissioners for consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Trowbridge.
Second.
Mr. Whitney, thank you. Any other questions or discussion? Back to the other end. Mr. Markowitz.
Aye.
Mr. Whitney.
Aye.
Ms. Jack.
Aye.
Mr. Trowbridge.
Aye.
Mr. Carlson.
Aye.
Mr. Shipples.
Aye.
And Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Chair also votes aye. We'll recommend this to the county commissioners, Board of County Commissioners for their approval. Thank you for making this flow so smoothly. Moving on to agenda item 3F, file number VR 2324, a vacation and replat for Ponderosa Pines Estates. Anyone in the audience here for that item? See anyone? Assuming a voice will tell me if there's somebody online. Commissioners, any questions or discussion on this item?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Trowbridge?
I believe I heard staff indicate that there was somebody that wanted to call in on this item. I was speaking to Mr. Hauser earlier. He indicated there was.
Did Mr. Kilgore go back to check? Is that what he's doing?
Okay.
Give them a minute.
Gotta love the technology.
Thank you for your patience. We're trying to deal with the B team in some cases and trying to make sure that we get everyone's opinions heard. Here's what we're going to do while we're waiting for this or working this. We'll move on to file number 3 or agenda item 3G. And if we get somebody coming back in, this was 3G. No,
F.
just some of the same numbers in the file number, and I'm reading it sideways, so sorry about that. We'll move on to file 3G, or agenda item 3G, file VA 243, which is a variance of use for 5935 Templeton Gap Road. Is there anyone in the audience who's here for that item? Again, don't see anyone. Commissioners, any questions or concerns about that one?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Carlson?
Yeah, after looking at that, I'd like to add a condition that the owner of the property needs to live on the property. That's the way the situation going into this, but reading the notes, it looks like the variance goes with the land, and in the future, just want to make sure that whoever's on that property is living on that property versus using it for something else.
That's a good question, and so we can get staff to address that, please. I had a similar question, and it'll go back to the variance on Cessna Drive, and it has to do with the duration of the variance. Does it by right convey to the in perpetuity, or does it just go with the current owners? I understand Mr. Carlson's concerns about this one. Can we get somebody who has an answer?
I think that's more probably a question for the county attorney. And I'll just state, my understanding is unless otherwise specified, variances run with the land.
Yes. So Megan Harrington, Planning Director, yes, these variances do not have those conditions that it would be specific to this current owner or for a specific amount of time. They are just written that they would transfer. You could condition a variance to be a certain amount of time or specific to the intention, which is in the letter of intent, which we have done in the past, but I don't believe that is the case here. With this variance, this owner has said his intention is to live on the property in his home because these are his accessory structures and it is his business. I don't believe, and I'm looking at Scott, the planner, I don't believe that we have made that a specific condition, but my understanding is you could do that if that property owner has the ability to comment on that through this hearing process. That he would be acceptable to that an owner live on the property. It's in the letter of intent. I guess if the county attorney has anything to add to that, I would let her do that.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr.
I would
Trowbridge.
just point out that the first condition says approval is limited as discussed in the applicant's letter of intent. Is that sufficient to bind that to the owner, or would we actually have to put another condition that says as long as the owner resides on the property?
Yeah, that would be, my question would be if the condition as it's written is predicated on the law
Letter.
being as you described. So there wouldn't necessarily be a need to say, to limit it.
Right.
And so the broader question for the county attorney, when Ms. Sego gets a chance to talk, I'd want to know if the intent of the rules as they're written, if we're straying from that, if we put conditions on there. I know we have that right to do that on anything, but kind of a broader matter, not just particularly for this item, but
And from a practical perspective, I'm just going to add this. From a practical perspective, 10 years from now, it is very difficult for staff to go back and interpret the intent of the letter of intent down to the specifics. So if you really have a concern about it, this is not a legal opinion. This is from a planning, how we implement your conditions and your intentions. From that perspective, it is much easier for us if you say specifically within a condition, this is what the condition is. Because otherwise, as time goes by and staff changes, we're left to kind of figure out through what is sometimes a very long letter of intent what the intention was. And so that's my 2 cents from a how we implement. But again, Lori, I think, is ready to give you a legal answer.
thank you.
Mr. Carlson, is the intent of your condition to require the property owner to live on the property or the business owner?
Property owner.
And the reason I ask is if we're going to add a condition, I want to make sure we're capturing your intent. So if the owner of the property lives on the property, you don't care who's operating the contractor's equipment yard on the property?
Not necessarily, no. What I'm trying to stay away from is in the future, as we've discussed, none of us are here, and there's approval to operate a construction lot on this property. They tear down the house, and now there's 75 trucks parked there, versus the intent of this, which is I'm going to live there. I own this business. I'm going to put an office building. I'll have a few trucks and some stuff in the back lot. That's what I'm concerned with.
All right. And then follow-up question. Do you want it to be limited to the owner of the property? Or could they, so long as it's used as a residence, and so long as someone's living there, there can be a contractor's equipment yard on the property?
No, I'd want it to be the property owner.
I can certainly assist with crafting a condition. I would recommend not crafting it as a requirement to live there, but crafting it in terms of it will expire upon the residence no longer being occupied by the owner of the property or something like that. So that
The owner of, like this owner or any future,
and this or any future owner, if that's your intent.
it's fine.
Okay.
Mr. Whitney, you had a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That was going to be my question. What happens if the owner moves? Then this lapses, I take it. Yeah.
I think on this one too, we have kind of gone beyond the consent calendar. So we're going to pull this one and hear this after the other variance and just try to get through this next one, which is agenda item 3H, file number MS239, a minor subdivision for 3275 Center Ice View in order to legalize this lot. Is there anyone in the audience here with concerns or questions about that item? No? Commissioners, any questions or concerns about this? On this item? Okay. Let's go ahead and bring them up and see if we need to hold them off for a few more minutes, but clearly off the record, I appreciate all of you people that come in here. It's a lot easier to work with people that are present and instead of trying to deal with the technology, but that's the world that we're in these days. So we'll do our best. So thank you for your patience.
Hello, this is Charles.
Okay, you're addressing the El Paso County Planning Commission. Please identify yourself fully and go ahead with your, tell me what your concern is about this item.
Thank you for entertaining me. My name is Charles Manley Jr. I'm a property owner in the area up there, and I am just calling to express my concern about adding a well to the neighborhood. I did have time to read the report on the water on your site, and I objected to what I thought was kind of a whopper in the report from the water lawyer that that this area, if we use average flows out of the aquifers for this area, we should get 15 gallons a minute. Nobody gets 15 gallons a minute in that area. I get about a quart a minute. So I'm naturally a little bit concerned about adding even one more well to an area where most people already buy water and have it hauled.
Okay, sir, thank you very much.
Thank you for hearing me.
We've seen we have the official water recommendations in front of us. We understand that water is a big concern from everybody in the county. I don't think that's sufficient to warrant a full hearing on this item unless one of you disagrees. I'll entertain a motion on file number MS
Mr. Chair,
239.
a
Mr.
comment,
Trowbridge.
a comment if I may.
Yes, you may.
Just for members of the audience and for those listening. We have very limited control over the water question. That's controlled by the state. All of the water in the state of Colorado is owned by the state. It's not owned by you. You do have rights to a well and such, but those are granted to us by the state. So the state engineer passes judgment on who has the water rights and how much they can draw. The county attorney also reviews that and provides us a report. So we have a full report in our staff items that we review, but we're not really allowed to question any of the assumptions. We can talk about them, but we're very limited in what we can challenge on that. And so if the state engineer says that people have rights to sufficient water, we can't naysay them. I will point out, though, that El Paso County does have a more stringent 300-year requirement that water supply must be good for, whereas the state only mandates 100. So we try and do what we can. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you for that. It's always a good reminder. We deal with it every week or every month when we have these hearings. But a reminder for the public is always a good one. We do have very good staff and the expertise that they provide us. We kind of have to defer to that expert judgment rather than just anecdotal. I'm having a problem, or my well doesn't work as well as you say it should, kind of thing. So, do we have a motion on this item?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Shipples.
With regards to agenda item 3H, file MS 239 for a minor subdivision at 3275 Center Ice View, minor subdivision to legalize lot, I move for approval in accordance with the attached resolution with 12 conditions, 2 notations, 1 waiver, and a finding of sufficiency for water quality, quantity, and dependability, and that this item be forwarded to the Board of County Commissioners for their consideration.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Jack, thank you very much. Any last discussion? Seeing none. Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Shipples?
Aye.
Mr. Carlson?
Aye.
Mr. Trowbridge?
Aye.
Ms. Jack?
Aye.
Mr. Whitney?
Aye.
And Mr. Markowitz?
Aye.
Sorry. And the chair also votes aye. Will recommend this unanimously to the Board of County Commissioners for their approval. Do we have the caller who would like to speak on, go back to where we are, Ponderosa Pines 3F? Oh, no, sorry, that's the one, 3F.
Mr. Chair?
Mr.
Yes,
Copeland?
there is a caller. I'll get with communications, okay?
Okay, yeah, bring them up. Let's see what they have to say.
Your call has been forwarded to an automated.
Unknown participant is now joining. Unknown participant is now exiting.
Your call has been forwarded to voicemail. The person you're trying to reach is not available.
Okay, I think we've made a good faith
Unknown
effort to,
participant is now joining. Unknown participant is now exiting.
okay. We've made an effort, we tried. I don't think there's any reason to delay any longer. Do I have a motion on file number VR 2324?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Carlson,
Regarding agenda item 3F, file number VR 2324 for vacation replat Ponderosa Pines Estates, I move for approval in accordance with the attached resolution with two conditions and two notations and a finding of sufficiency with regard to water quality, quantity, and dependability, and that this item be forwarded to the Board of County Commissioners for their consideration.
thank you, Mr. Carlson.
Second.
Mr. Trowbridge, thank you. Any other discussion on this? Seeing none, we'll start with Mr. Markowitz.
Aye.
Mr. Whitney. Aye. Ms. Jack.
Aye.
Mr. Trowbridge.
Aye.
Mr. Carlson.
Aye.
Mr. Shipples.
Aye.
And Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Chair also votes aye. We'll recommend this item to the Board of County Commissioners for their approval. Okay, now we'll move back to the called up items. File number VA 245. This is the variance of use for 8304 and 8308 Cessna Drive. If we could get, who we have on this? Oh, Ms. Parsons, good morning. And what I think we want is a quick overview of this, and then maybe the applicant to discuss some of the safety and traffic issues.
I'll be as quickly as I can be, but I do want to not cause any confusion. So I'll try to highlight the things that I think I'm predicting are going to come up, if that's
Yes.
okay, Chair.
Nope, that's absolutely.
Okay, I'll go as quick as possible.
I'm not looking for the quick necessarily as just the summary. And you've been doing this a lot longer than I have, so I trust your judgment.
Okay. Carrie Parsons with Planning and Community Development. Already read into record is the variance of use for Cessna Drive. Anybody that is watching remotely and you do want to participate in this hearing, if you could please email this email address and we'll get you in the queue and get you called in. Again, this is a request for a vehicle repair garage in the R4, which is Planned Development Zoning District. It also includes a request to allow for the repair and storage of heavy trucks, recreational vehicles, and trailers for government contracts only on the site. Typically, those types of vehicles would not fall into a vehicle repair garage by definition. So that is why the request includes that. And as it is a variance, that is quite acceptable in terms of the process. Any questions on what is actually being asked today?
Yes, sorry. There was a question, I believe one of the letters about this talked about a limit on the variance. And I don't believe that was in the request. I think that was just an opinion that somebody wanted it. So I'd like to make sure that, much as the next one that's coming up, we understand what this variance does.
Okay, and I'm going to cover that.
Okay, thank you.
Criteria of approval is the standard criteria approval on your screen for a variance of use. It is also in your staff report packets. This is a zoning map of the area. Just giving you zoning highlights because there's a lot of history here. But in a nutshell, you'll see that the area is hot pink, which is R4. It's also a similar color to what we see as a PUD today. Again, that's very customized zoning. R4 applications are very much like you see today in terms of a PUD. The applicant would present a letter of intent and a development plan. In this case, in 1981, it was a written development plan in textual form to describe what they would be doing on the property in the future. So currently for this particular lot or lots in the Meadow Lake Airport, it is 1981 zoned R4. It is also within the Meadow Lake General Aviation Overlay, which is depicted as that hatched mark. The General Aviation Overlay Zoning District applies to Meadow Lake, and basically in a nutshell, it typically would limit the airport-related uses within that overlay area. However, it doesn't nullify the underlying zoning district, so it wouldn't nullify anything that would have been permitted in that 1981 R4 zoning district. Does everybody understand that? Okay, great.
Yes, Mr. Chair. In the R4 parcels, does it allow for this use that they're asking for?
Getting there. Okay, some historical highlights. Again, in 1984, after that 1981 R4, there was a lot line vacation between lots 8 and 9, which is before you today, requiring that the condition required it to be now known as Lot 9. And it also restricted the uses on that particular lot, now 2 lots becoming 1, to hangars and aircraft. An aircraft hangar was constructed on lots 7 and now 8 and 9 are 9. And we don't know historically when it stopped being aviation. It wasn't in our background information. Perhaps somebody in the audience has that background information, although I don't know that it's irrelevant to the approval criteria. We do know that a code enforcement case was opened in 2021 for the vehicle repair garage, which works on only government vehicles, government contracted vehicle repair. And staff has been working through the end of COVID and to today to determine what is the best process to put them through within the airport. And that is why we are here before you today asking for the variance of use for the vehicle repair garage with the additional allowances for the RV trailers, et cetera, type of stuff that you would see for SWAT Command and other governmental agencies. The site plan for this is important to Mr. Bailey's question to make sure that we're addressing safety and taxiways. So I want to point out here, these dashed lines here, this is the taxiway easement. So aircraft do frequent this. This is their movement. So any safety concerns that cars would be crossing that to access the concrete driveway to get to this business, the applicant can defend if there are concerns there by an audience member. But yes, they do go over the taxiway. Cessna Drive is a paved road. It is a private road, not maintained by El Paso County. So here you can see access to this lot, these hangars with parking in the middle, and then also this adjacent hangar, which they also conduct business on. And so again, I think that answers Mr. Bailey's questions in terms of how that relates to the business.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Strobridge.
sorry. So to your knowledge, Carrie, is the roadway and the taxiway, are they separated? I can't tell if there's a berm or a greenway in between. Are they clearly delineated, or is part of the issue that there's confusion between what's the roadway and what's the taxiway?
There's no berm because other planes are going to be crossing the adjacent, they're crossing the taxiway perpendicularly.
I understand that, but people who are driving on Cessna Drive, do they understand they're on a roadway and that they're not on the taxiway? Or that's where I think maybe is there some confusion about which is which?
I can't speak for other drivers, sir. However, when I have been to the airport, I was savvy enough to understand what was the private roadway and what was identified as the driveway or the runways and what was identified as the taxiway. But I don't know if others are able to figure that one out.
Okay, and then, so perhaps as a question for engineering, as people go from Cessna Drive into the business, are they aware that there's a well-marked path of where they can cross the taxiway to get to the business? I think that's a safety concern.
I'll rephrase my answer. Staff was able to determine that, but I can't speak as to other folks if they're able to understand what's going on there. So I would defer that to somebody from the airport to see if maybe there's an accident log that they have. I think that's something staff can't speak for.
No, and presumably the
Yeah.
applicant
An
can talk to
applicant
that.
question.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, the airport overall is identified as an employment center place type, and as you are very well aware, we would typically see those industrial uses, heavy industrial uses, offices, warehouses, and supporting retail, commercial service, commercial retail uses, and restaurants. So overall, the use would be considered consistent with the master plan employment center place type. In terms of staff's analysis of this, as I mentioned, in the 1981 R4, I mentioned that when the 1981 R4 zoning went through, it relied on the letter of intent and the development plan, which was a textual document to describe the type of uses within the R4 zone district that the Board of County Commissioners would be approving. In the letter of intent that was submitted in support of that, there was a statement in there, and I think the applicant highlighted that in their review of the letter of the 1981 R4 letter of intent, which they basically attached to their existing letter of intent, that identified that uses inside of the PBP planned business park would be allowed uses. But then later in that same letter, and then supported by the development plan text submitted with that 1981 R4, it limited those uses to be in support of the airport. So throughout the years as staff's been working with this, we would see gas station, convenience store, hospital, laundromat, library, liquor store, proprietary schools, restaurants, and repair shop as standard allowed uses in what was PBP, now CC zoning district, to be allowed in this R4, with the caveat that they were supporting the airport function. So just like you go to DIA, there's restaurants in there, there's repair shops, et cetera. Same kind of, vision, I believe, in 1981. So that being said, a repair garage could be said to be consistent with that 1981 R4 zoning district had it just served aircraft. But in this case, it's not serving aircraft exclusively. And so that is why the applicant is before you today, asking for that variance of use because they work on other governmental vehicles other than aircraft. Is that clear as mud?
Mr. Chair, do they work on aircraft?
I'm going to let the applicant answer that one, sir. let's see.
Mr. Chair.
Yes. Sorry, Mr.
If
Markowitz.
this was approved, the variance is for this lot only, correct?
The variance would be for lots 7 and 9 as
well, those
depicted
two.
on that site development plan. And notice we didn't tie it to the letter of intent, we tied it to the site development plan.
So if this particular owner of this garage leaves, then whoever comes in next, they're going to be able to continue that variance and that use.
That is correct. The variance of use runs with the land. So the small business owner would have the opportunity to sell it to another small business owner if they so desired.
But it would still be restricted to, was it light vehicles, light truck, or passenger vehicles, light trucks, and the government contracted large vehicles?
Yes, I'm trying to make sure if I thought I put that language in there, but I didn't. But yes, correct. It is absolutely restricted, just like it says on that site plan in your application packet, to government-only RVs, trailers, basically SWAT vehicles, your emergency, vehicles only.
Okay, so that continues. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think I've already kind of covered everything in this, so I don't need to restate it unless there are other questions. I would mention that we did send this to the Meadow Lake Airport Association. Staff did receive a couple letters from Mr. Elliott. Those are attached to your staff packet. And I do believe there are some folks that are involved with the airport also here to speak. I don't know if they're speaking in for or against, but they are here in the audience. Any other questions for staff?
And Mr. Chairman, while this is out of our typical order, the citizen that raised her hand earlier to tell you that she wanted to speak on this item, she is operating under a time constraint, and she has asked me to ask you if you would be willing to hear her testimony, so to speak, before the applicant, because she is not able to stay, but would really like to be able to speak directly to you.
I guess if the county attorney doesn't object to going out of order, I have a little bit of a problem with it, but we'll go ahead and let you come up very quickly, make your comments, and make your comments. I won't limit you too much, but
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Paley Reed. I am the owner and operator of Metal Bird Hangars at Meadow Lake Airport. We are an airport. To ask for a variance that doesn't support something that is airport related is a significant concern. We have a lot of businesses out there working under those guises. We need some support from zoning to get that under control. We have literally, I think, 76 aircraft that are on a wait list for hangars. These aircraft are out in the open, or they're in other places waiting for hangars. Aircraft are impacted by sun, hail. And so I would just ask for your support in helping us maintain our zoning for aircraft-related businesses and aircraft-related items. I am opposed to the zoning change. Thank you.
thank you. Thank you for your comments. And I think now we will hear from the applicant. Or do you have something more for us, Ms. Parsons?
I don't have to make my conclusion statement. It's okay. No worries. I'll bring the applicant up.
Thank you. Anita Reese with Vertex. Just going to get out of here.
You need help pulling up the files or anything?
Thank you, though. So I will try to answer the questions that I heard come up as we go through the presentation. And then if there are additional questions, of course, feel free to let me know. And part of what I'm going to do, since I did hear from some of the members in opposition, I will provide responses. But Mr. Bailey, I would like to reserve my right for a rebuttal at the end, even still. Okay, thank you.
We will now try to stick to the established order.
Thank you. Okay, so as Ms. Parsons said, this is a request for a variance of use to allow for a vehicle repair garage in the R4 zone district. She already went over where the property is, so I won't cover that again. She went over the background as well. That really the biggest restriction here is that plat note, that it's restricted to hangars and tie-down facilities. So as she mentioned, in other areas of the Meadow Lake Airport, if this were proposed to be for repair related to airplanes or engines or anything related to some type of aviation operation, because of that plat note restriction, they actually could not do it on the property. So that in itself is a hardship. I'll go through the hardship in greater detail, but that in itself is a hardship. The main building was constructed in 1985. There was some question about when the building got converted. The building was actually converted over 20 years ago. It was initially used for a diesel mechanic for about 20 years, and then after that it was a battery shop. That battery shop has since moved to what everybody refers to as the Big Red Barn on Meadow Lake. If you've been there, you know which building we're talking about. Before the Sons purchased the property and are now using it for their vehicle repair. So it has been used for other uses other than aviation for many, many years. It has actually been converted from an airport hangar to now you could not put an airplane inside of that building. There are no large overhead doors. So in order for them to convert it, that would be a significant cost to the current property owner or any future property owner as well, because you literally cannot put an airplane inside of the building. Oh, I'm missing a slide here. It looks like my most recent one isn't here, so that is my fault. So I'm going to just give you more information. I have some pictures as well for what they do. So there were a lot of questions about the business operations, what they do, issues related to traffic as well. So this is all custom vehicle, not even repair necessarily, but customization of vehicles. So they work with the fire department, with the sheriff's department, Colorado Springs police, SWAT. And so it is not like a Jiffy Lube where you have people coming and going every few minutes. They work on maybe one vehicle per week. Sometimes they go and pick that vehicle up and bring it to the site. Sometimes it's a member of emergency response that's bringing the vehicle there. These are not average citizens. I'm sure they are very familiar with this being an airport and know that you can't just go and drive down the runway. To your point, Mr. Trowbridge, there's very little traffic for that reason as well. They have 3 employees, so the traffic coming in and out from those employees, it's limited. They work on site, so of course they know that there are airplanes that may be landing on the runway. They know that they have to look both ways and make sure that there's not an airplane coming before they cross that driveway, to your point, Mr. Trowbridge. There was a question about if airplanes are ever worked on in this facility. They leave that open, so they have had very limited requests from people within the airport to work on their airplanes. Ms. Sun can respond to that and provide you more detail if you would like, but they have worked on experimental aircraft and helped out with that effort. So they're not closing the doors to airplanes. It's just there's not a significant need at the moment. Are there any questions about the actual operations?
Mr. Carlson. So do they work on airplanes at all?
We have. Experimental aircraft we've painted, we've helped. Oh, sorry.
That way it's on the record.
Sorry. Yes, we have. We've worked on experimental aircrafts. We've painted aircraft parts. And we actually have a whole plane that they're bringing in. It's an experimental plane, so it's not fully put together yet. So they're bringing it in piece by piece for us to paint that plane. So we do offer our assistance whenever we are asked. We've also helped out the Springs Aviation. There are some tools sometimes that they don't have that they will come to us and we will provide when asked and if we have those tools. So we don't shut off aviation at all. We're very much pro aviation in that area. So.
Great, thanks.
I apologize. I just want to be sure we got an introduction from Ms. Sund at the beginning, so we know who you are.
Oh, yes, sorry. Sorry. My name is Esther Sund. I'm the owner of Sund Estate Management and also the automotive repair garage that is actually there. So,
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Administrative cleanup, so.
thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Smith,
can you pull up the overhead image again?
Absolutely.
Can we address the concern of cars and airplanes and tail draggers? And with this image, maybe we can get a better idea of what we're even talking about.
Sure.
I can definitely
Yeah.
speak on it if,
Okay.
if that, because I'm there every day. So Cessna Drive is primarily where all the planes go. If you see that drive right there, we do have taxi easements on our property, and that's in case you see these hangars that are right down south of my property, how they look like little condos that are all attached together. People are bringing their planes out and they're driving them on this little concrete pad. That's why those taxi easements are there. I don't have those in front of my building. Right there on that corner, my building doesn't have anybody that takes a plane through right in front of my building like that, because there's nobody that owns planes on my block that would need to utilize that area. It's still an easement and it's still there, but the planes, they go off that little easement right there in front of those
can you give
little
us the
buildings.
cursor so we can
Oh, yeah.
see what we're doing here?
Yep. So right here is right here are the buildings that I'm referring to. So the planes come out of these buildings, they come this way, they get on the road, and then they go this way. No planes ever come in front of my building right here because I own both of these. And then there's no buildings on any of these properties right here. Not one. So nobody ever takes a plane right in front of my property. They haven't. I've been there since 2019.
But, excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
But there is a taxi easement
Correct.
there.
There is.
But is it?
But it's never utilized for planes.
Is it marked as a taxi easement?
No.
Are there other, where planes actually do go? So in the property adjacent to yours, are there markings on the taxi easement?
Yes, they have markings there that show that these are taxi easements.
So it kind of dead ends at your the taxi
Correct.
easement markings.
Dead
So the
end at our
taxi
property.
easement's there, but the markings end at your property, and then do they begin again after your property?
They probably begin again right here because these planes right here use these easements to come through, and then they get right here on this road and come to the flight.
And do they only use the easement to go perpendicular straight over to Cessna, or are they going parallel to your building? Parallel to Cessna?
Well, it depends on where you are. That's so on this one right here, they don't have access directly to Cessna this way. So they come out this way and go here. These ones right here, they come out this way, get on this little road, come here, and then get on Cessna, come all the way down, and then go this way.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And the vehicles coming to and from your shop, show us how they come in, please.
They come through right here, come straight to our building.
Are you pointing to Cessna Drive or?
Yes. So
Okay.
right where Jet Door is, they come down Cessna Drive and come directly to our building.
Okay. So this goes to the comment before, there are, regular motor vehicles and aircraft using the same piece of concrete to get to and from where
Yep.
they're going.
And that's the same entrance that everybody uses to get into the airport, to get to their hangars, the same way. Whenever they have any sort of events that they host at the airport, that'd be the same way somebody that found this event on Facebook would enter in that doesn't know the airport, that found out about an event. So there is public that access this that, aren't necessarily there all day, every day either.
And I believe I heard somebody say that Cessna Drive is a private road maintained by the Airport Association or somebody who's
That is, I know the airport owns, from where this road goes right here, MLA owns this road. They own right to here, and then they own a little bit past my building right here. I don't know past that. And honestly, if that question could be a Dave question. But I know if you look on EDARP or the El Paso County Assessor site, they don't own the whole road. So I don't know how that
No,
gets taken care of.
So what I'm trying to distinguish here is we have a very specific application for your lots.
That's correct.
The roads leading to and from your lots are not yours. You have no responsibility to maintain those.
Correct.
Is that correct?
That would be correct.
Okay,
She has the right to access.
yes, it's an important distinction, but the just as somebody whose driveway goes out onto a county road, once you cross over your lot line, it becomes the owner of that road, the county, or in this case, it sounds like Meadow Lake Airport. If there is a traffic problem on Cessna Drive, it's not your problem, it's Meadow Lake Airport's problem. Is that a fair characterization?
It's their responsibility to maintain, and everybody pays into that association for the maintenance.
The association, but not the individual, you know, you
Right.
don't have that
And I'm sure
stretch. And you have
Mr.
no
Elliott is
authority
here, so he
to
can
mark, you know, put up signs saying, watch out for the airplanes, because that's what you pay the association for.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, and we'll let you get back to your presentation.
Okay, thank you. So now I'm going to go through each one of the criteria. Some of them will be quite quick because there's not much to discuss. So the first one is establishing our hardship. So as was stated previously, this property is zoned R4. That R4 was established in 1981. There are some other uses that are allowed within that R4 zone district, but because of the plat note restriction, this property doesn't automatically get the benefit of those other permitted uses. Another potential option could be rezoning the property to a commercial zone district, but a lot of the uses that come along with the commercial zoning may not be considered compatible with the Meadow Lake Airport and airport functions. For example, having a daycare. Kids probably won't understand that you can't run down the runway there, so that might not be the best thing. It's also no longer an option to request a plat note waiver, subdivision exemption, or some type of vacation of that plat note. And so staff, as Carrie identified, staff has recommended the variance option as the only other avenue. So the next criteria is the master plan. I know Ms. Parsons went over this, but this is within the minimal change undeveloped. It identifies that some underutilized or vacant sites may be used for other purposes or redeveloped. In this instance, as I said before, this actually has been used for other purposes, automotive type purposes for over 20 years. This area of change would support a change in use as long as you don't alter the essential character. So the essential character of the Meadow Lake Airport and the surrounding area. There are actually quite a few other commercial uses that are not necessarily specific to airport hangars within the vicinity. Some of them include agritainment. There are some vehicle repair shops. There's even a sign company within this area. So most certainly the Meadow Lake Airport area is characterized by some light commercial, some light industrial type uses. Not only that, vehicle repair has very, very similar impacts to airplane repair or airplane mechanic shop. In this instance, because they only do customized work, you will not see the same number of vehicle trips coming back and forth. The folks that are coming there are very much aware that they are within an airport as well. So we think that the impacts are going to be very, very similar.
Mr. Chair. Ms. Reese, just one quick question. You've mentioned that this is a particular kind of repair. Is there anything in the definition of commercial vehicle repair garage that could allow them to change my oil if I decided I wanted to go out there?
Don't change oil.
I understand, but
yeah.
you get my point.
answer-
Yeah, you're talking about repair on government vehicles, essentially.
That's correct.
Is there anything stopping if the owner decides to expand the business and do not just government vehicles? Is there anything that would preclude that?
Not in the application as it's been presented today.
Okay.
The recommendation from staff was to request a variance of use for vehicle repair, so that's what we have done. We wouldn't have any objection if you wanted to have that same limitation of as identified in the letter of intent, that's fine. It's not their intent to have a Jiffy Lube on the property. So that's not an issue if you want to add a condition.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Markowitz.
So, I'm sorry, which property is yours? Is yours ProTrans Plus?
Oh, no, it's not. So it's right here where it says subject property.
Okay,
I'm sorry,
so-
it's kind of small.
Okay, so I'm looking at this list, and I see ProTrans Plus, commercial vehicle repair garage. I see a sign shop. I see a towing company. I see a number of uses that don't seem to be aviation related, but yet are still in the area of the property. Are these businesses gonna have to apply for variances also? Because it looks like some of them are not aviation related.
So that's something that Ms. Parsons addressed in her staff report. She did identify that it's very possible that some of these existing uses have not gone through the proper process. So I would let her respond if she would like to.
Commissioner Markowitz, we actually have, Mindy, 23 or 27? We have recent complaints, code enforcement violation complaints. I can't pinpoint that, and that's not what we're here to talk about today, but there are other properties that have had citizens file complaints related to non-airport related uses out here. There are quite a number of them, and I cannot tell you how they're all going to be resolved at this point.
So this, before you purchased the property, this was the automotive working
It's a
repair
diesel-
shop.
Diesel
And
mechanic shop and then a battery shop.
so it seems like it's been an illegal use or non-approved use for 20 years. Is that accurate?
It has not been utilized for airport hangars for over 20 years.
Okay. And so when you purchased the property, your assumption was that, hey, it's been used for this, then it's okay, and you just never
That's
looked at the details, or the previous owner didn't disclose, hey, there's restrictions on what can be done in here?
correct. So the building doesn't even have hangar doors anymore. It has regular garage doors. Whenever we got our loan from the bank, because R4 allows for these uses, like they didn't even bat an eye at us getting our loans for these buildings because it's not a hangar building. So that wasn't even a question that got brought up whenever we were buying the property. Now, you know, the question that I always had is I'm private property. I own my property. The airport doesn't own my property. And so my assumption was it's my property. You know, as long as I'm within the R4, I'm allowed. And I was there 2 years prior before buying the property. I rented it from an aviation person. They rented it out to me. And then I bought the property 2 years later from an aviation person that owned that building at that time. No negatives then either until 2021 after I bought the property.
Okay, thank you.
Let me piggyback on that if I may. Ownership of this property, does that require, are you required to be part of the Meadow Lake Airport Association?
I'm not required. There's no covenants under my property, although I do pay dues still to Meadow Lake Airport. I think that that's very vital for Meadow Lake Airport.
I'm not that bright, so I'm just trying to equate this to a homeowners association or something that at some point when you purchase the property, any covenants that would have applied to this should have been provided to you from the association, and your purchase is predicated on agreeing to those or not. If it's required, you say you're not necessarily required. That helps me understand the environment that you're operating in. So thank you.
Okay. The property is also within the employment center place type, which does recommend light industrial and commercial uses, which this proposed use fits perfectly within that. This place type specifically identifies the Meadow Lake Airport as being one of those employment center areas. So as Ms. Parsons identified, you look at the airport, you think about airports, you think about DIA, and then now Colorado Springs Airport as well. And you'll see that there are light industrial uses, gas stations, restaurants, and things like that surrounding airports. The FAA has documents that support it as well. They have identified supporting and compatible land uses and repair shops. That's one of them. So criteria 3, the proposed use is compatible with the surrounding area, harmonious with the character of the neighborhood, not detrimental to the surrounding area, not detrimental to the future development of the area, and not detrimental to health, safety, welfare of the inhabitants. So as we discussed previously, there are many other commercial uses in this vicinity. The R4 and GAO allow for commercial uses, including airport repair, which this has exactly the same impacts as airport and airplane repair. For the health, safety, and welfare, because they contract with local emergency responders, including SWAT, including fire, and police, so on, they are actually critical to ensuring that our emergency responders can get the equipment that they need. They have bulletproof windows that they need. They have gun holsters inside of their vehicles so that they can respond. So they are promoting the health, safety, and welfare of the surrounding El Paso County and beyond. Additionally, Meadow Lake Airport Association has provided a letter identifying that they have no objection. We were actually at that meeting where they voted on if they were going to provide no objection or not. At that meeting, there was only one individual who identified that they had a concern, not specifically with her use, but just with allowing other non-aviation related uses. I'm going to lump these together because these are all existing structures. There's no impact, so there's no issue with air, water, odor, noise, no issues with the code, and no issues with wildlife or wetlands.
And the current use has been, again, how long? How long have you?
19?
At least 20 years, if not more. It hasn't been aviation, if that's what you
But
mean.
no, you're.
I've been there since 2019.
Thank you.
Yes.
So the applicant has addressed all off-site impacts. The potential off-site impacts are no different than any other property within Meadow Lake Airport. The site plan for the proposed variance of use will provide adequate parking, traffic circulation, open space fencing, screening, and landscaping. That 1981 R4 that Carrie referenced, there's actually a section of it that identifies that in the Meadow Lake Airport, landscaping, screening, and fencing is not required because you don't want to have items planted or put up that could be an obstacle for airplanes. So although there's no landscaping on site, they're in compliance. And then there are 12 parking spaces depicted. That's what the code requires. They they never actually have that many vehicles there because it's just the 3 employees, and then whatever vehicle they're working on is usually in the shop. So they can accommodate that number, but it's really not needed. For criteria number 3, there's an existing well on site. There's an existing septic system. There's Falcon Fire provides response if needed, and then all improvements already constructed. With that, are there any additional questions?
Any questions for the applicant? Mr. Carlson?
Thank you. So the application is for a vehicle repair garage, but I believe you're saying you really don't do repairs. You really just do customization. Is that right?
That's correct. The staff can respond to this most certainly, but typically when there's a variance of use, staff asks you to find the most closely related use. So that's the most closely related use. The definition has.
In our list of uses?
Yep, the definition has a much broader list of permitted uses of what she's actually doing. So the letter of intent describes what she's actually doing, which is customization of vehicles specifically for emergency response. And then they will work on airplanes as desired, really, as people might
As
come.
people come and, we provided quotes to some people, Yes, we provided quotes to many people. Some have come back and utilized our services and some have not. But, we're all for helping out to the aviation completely, so.
What I'm getting at is it seems the request seems to allow any vehicle repair, which is, again, allow, tire shop or changing oil or, tearing down engines and rebuilding them and all that kind of stuff. And that doesn't seem to be what you're doing or what you want to do at all.
No.
Okay. And so there's no other uses that have been explored that more directly define what you're doing?
None that deal with automotive. This was the closest used for automotive.
So there's nothing that's vehicle customization of any kind?
No, but we would have no objection if you wanted to propose a condition to limit the use as they're currently using it.
Great. Thank you.
No other questions? Let's, Ms. Parsons, you want to come up, please? Help us out with that last little bit about finding some kind of compatible use that
I
we
would
can
love
use.
to.
Thank you.
So, thank you, I've got it, thank you. So yes, thank you. So actually, the Land Development Code does not have a current definition for working on an aircraft. We don't define aircraft. We do, however, define the vehicle repair garage, which does exclude. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm trying to get to OneDrive blank, and I don't know where I'm at now. I look like I'm buying concert tickets. Okay, thank you, Blake.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Trowbridge.
While she's hunting for that, I think this goes to the point Ms. Harrington raised earlier about trying to interpret prior letters of intent and what was intended, back in the early 80s. This is the issue she was pointing out to us, right? Unless we are specific with something, it's going to be open to interpretation 40 years from now.
Well, and I think it also raises the issue of enforcement. How is this kind of stuff enforced if these activities have been going on for a long time and now there's 27, complaints? Why is that? And so that concerns me a little bit too. So yeah, good point. We want to be sure that we craft these resolutions such that they capture all of, our intent, and that is then, transferable to the people, our successors 20 years from now.
I have a three-part answer to your two-part question, Mr. Trowbridge. So defined in our definition for vehicle repair garage, it does include the paint and the body and the fender work or the incidental storage. And so it's all kind of one definition. Otherwise, we would be separating it out. And at some point in our negotiations with the applicant in the conference room, there was a statement that at some point in time, these folks did do some work for those folks that are in the aviation community, and that if they had an issue with their car, they would go ahead and help and fix them. That is why staff did not limit that, because we didn't want to take that away as a benefit to the aviation community. Now, if that's something that's changed and now they're no longer providing those services to those pilots that are driving their vehicles to the plane, that's new information to staff. But that is specifically why staff did not limit that, so that they could continue to provide those services to those pilots and their families if they needed vehicle work. Additionally, we've added the heavy storage or the heavy trucks, recreational vehicles, and trailers to only be for those government, to prevent them from working on, I would call more residential or typical citizens' RVs and making them customized. That is specifically why we added that to the site plan and not to the letter of intent. And that is why that condition is not tied to an applicant's letter of intent, but more specifically tied to those notes on that site plan. So we wouldn't have to go back 10 years from now and interpret a letter of intent. So I would remind the commissioners that the R4 zoning, yes, it included a letter of intent, but more specifically, it included a development plan describing those uses, which is what staff is relying on and why staff came to the conclusion that a variance of use is appropriate here. Because those uses, although restaurant, typical commercial uses are allowed, they were intended to support the aviation or the airport. Does that answer your question, Mr. Carlson?
Well, I don't know. First of all, in the development, I don't know if it's the development plan or what have you, that they highlighted the area where it says it refers back to R2 and anything that's allowed under that, and then that's PPP and whatever. The prior paragraph says it'll only be aviation uses on there. So I'm struggling with what trumps what. It says in the that the OG2 or whatever it is overlay trumps R2, but then it says, but it allows everything in R2, and then R2 says it allows all that stuff. So
Yep.
how do we figure out what trumps what in this, if anything does?
Yes, so let's get there together. So your staff, as well as the planning manager, I can't remember your new title, I'm so sorry, but code enforcement and the county attorney and the director, we talked about this, and we came to the conclusion that the underlying zoning, those development guidelines are stand that commercial uses supporting the airport, that is the zoning. Regardless of what the applicant chose to highlight in their letter of intent, staff's interpretation of that 1981 R4 zoning is that it allows those PBP, now CC zoning uses if they support the airport. And I believe Ms. Ruiz referenced the Colorado Springs Airport, similar uses in DIA. So that is how we got there. And so the answer is, we believe if the uses support the airport, they're allowed. If they do not, we're back before you for the variance. And to close that thought out, we are a code complaint driven code enforcement department. So we don't go driving down the airport looking for any violators, if you will. If we get a complaint, we will do an investigation, and any folks that are operating outside of an airport-related supporting use would likely be coming before us, we hope, to solve their complaint if they don't want to cease and desist with the variance of use. And I think that covers all the questions that were brought up, whether they're directed to staff or just in general, unless I missed something.
My only other thing is this vehicle repair garage, commercial, is that all the verbiage after that that's defined in the code?
Absolutely, sir. That is straight out of Chapter 1 under definitions.
And there's no other definition that better fits, you think, for a customization type of garage versus a repair garage?
No, if we had like a hot rod shop come in that, I don't know, maybe they just did fancy leather. I don't know what a hot rod shop does, but we would put them here.
Great, thanks.
Mr. Markowitz.
Ms. Parsons, I think one of the concerns is that if this if this gets approved, and then tomorrow the property owner decides to sell, that this property maintains its at least current character and not become a Jiffy Lube. So are these restrictions where you're saying, okay, storage for heavy trucks, you've got you got to have a government contract. I mean, do those things restrict that type of use? If someone's turned it into Jiffy Lube, and then you've got traffic going all the time.
Can I have a second to confer with the county attorney before I answer
Sure.
that?
And no offense to Jiffy Lube.
Well, and this goes to the question that I raised earlier, the duration of the variance. I just pulled up the Meadow Lake Airport Association letter of support, specifically says our support only extends to this use and this owner.
Right.
And that's where we need to clarify before we finish this, that if the applicant agrees to that, we can put language in there. We don't have to listen to what Meadow Lake Airport says, but we need to consider that, and especially since it's related to the other one, I think it's timely that we have these two together.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, for what it's worth, for the record, I think I'm going to put words in people's mouths, but I believe I did hear the applicant say they're perfectly happy with a condition that would limit the use to the use it's current, as opposed to, so customization, government vehicles and the like, as opposed to a Jiffy Lube, so.
Yeah. We just have to confirm that, but we'll do that.
So, Commission, you could implement a condition that staff would be able to enforce that limited it to this particular property owner. We can enforce that because we can catch the sales. You could also provide a more specific condition on the limit of the types of work that this individual company does in your your recommended conditions of approval that we may be able to enforce. It's very difficult for a code enforcement officer to know if it's a government unmarked detective car or if it's Mr. Whitney's car. That's very difficult for us to enforce from a code enforcement standpoint. So just keep that in mind as we're moving along.
Yeah, it's a body shop. We don't have a definition of a body shop. We definitely will take this conversation away to our new code update because we probably do need to separate out the definition of a body shop, but you could take this definition and if the applicant is amenable, just focus on the words that say major minor work such as paint, body, and fender work, and then you're leaving a lot of the engine transmission out of that, and that, in my mind, would eliminate the Jiffy Lube, any type of work. And I see that Ms. Ruiz is giving the thumbs up, and so we're still within the definitions within the code, but we're eliminating that other section. And we all know what that means.
And I think that might be a better way to do it than restricting it to the owner. Because if Ms. Reed, I believe it is, decided, hey, I'm turning it into a Jiffy Lube. I mean, if you can't just restrict it to just the owner, because if that owner decides to change the use, then all of a sudden we've got that problem. So I think that specifying may be the best way.
If I may, I'm going to pull up the applicant's site plan. I would suggest that we actually modify that note on the site plan. That way it's very specific. And then again, that condition of approval referring to what is on the site plan captures what you want. So if we could pull up the site plan.
So why don't we do this? we've got a lot of people here that I think want to speak in favor and in opposition of this. Why don't Carrie work and look up some conditions, and we can propose some language to you, a note on the site plan, and get it all buttoned up, so when you're ready to come back, we will have some recommendations, because I hear you saying you would like some recommendations. We'll have some recommendations we worked out with the county attorney while you hear the citizens here to speak, if that would be all right, sir.
Yes, and I was going to say that there may be other comments, there may be other things that we need to address or consider as we go. So, Mr. Markowitz.
There's one thing when you're crafting this language, I mean, I think one of the things I'm concerned about is opening a can of worms, because there's obviously other businesses on this property that are doing things that are not explicitly allowed. So therefore we're getting these code complaints. So I'm not sure if you can draft the language where it includes this. I'm afraid that if we allow this, then all the other ones that are not consistent with the use, they're going to all of a sudden line up and then use this as precedent. So I'm not sure how you craft that to not open the can of worms and say, okay, hey, everybody that's got a non-conforming use right now, get in line, let's go ahead and apply.
I'm going to tell you that there's not a way to do that. Every variance that you will see, if you consider other variances in the future, you're going to have specific to the site. You're going to have to find specifically on what they're doing if it meets the criteria. We could go back and forth on if it sets a precedent. I would say that it doesn't necessarily set a full precedent, because it could be a completely different use, completely different set of circumstances in a different location. And so I would say I don't think we're going to get there this morning. If you're that concerned about it, you've got other options other than a condition. But we are going to focus on this specific property the best we can.
Mr. Chair.
Carlton.
I'm in agreement with the coming up with some language for the use, but I'd also like, when you're looking at that language, is to conclude some kind of language that ties it just to this owner. In other words, if some new owner comes in, they've got to come back and get okay on their use and whatever they're going to do with the property. Thanks.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. Trowbridge.
Can I suggest a break until
That's-
quarter to the hour and have audience members, those are for and against this item, sign in so that we have them on the record?
Yep. Read my mind. Thank you very much. So we will take a break, 10 minutes or so. If you could, anyone who wants to speak on this item, make sure you've signed in. And then let me get a show of hands. Is it Mr. Silvers? In addition to Mr. Silvers, we have another back there. We have a couple more. Okay, great. Very good. So we'll be back here in 10 minutes or so, and we'll go from there. Thank you. Let's come back to order, please. And we'll move this along. I know they're still working on some language over there, but it's not, that doesn't necessarily preclude us from hearing from members of the public who have an interest in this. So our normal practice is to first hear from people who are in favor of the application, and then people who are opposed to the application. So we'll do that. And again, I appreciate you signing in as you come to the microphone, and you figure out how you want to do this. Who wants to be first? Please identify yourself for the record. Mr. Elliott, we'll let you go first.
Well, let me go first just to see if I can explain some of the details, some of the controversy, but I'm also going to probably create a few more. Dave Elliott, I wear two hats. I'm president of the board for the Meadow Lake Airport Association. I'm also the airport manager. And I make that distinction because my letter that I wrote to you says we have a statement of no objection, because I can argue both sides of it. The Sons are great members in good standing of the association. And that's an important distinction because their deed to the property, the development plans for the Meadow Lake Airport subdivisions make no reference to the Meadow Lake Airport Association. That didn't exist when they started the airport. The association wasn't created until '71. So the bylaws for the association really are the people, not the properties. We're not an HOA, so I have no authority over the hangar properties, nor does the FAA. The FAA is very adamant that hangars are for aeronautical uses only. The only exception to that is if an airport needs to generate income and they have no aeronautical clients, then they can do it on a temporary basis. But as an airplane shows up that needs a hangar, the temporary occupant has to leave. But the FAA has no jurisdiction over private property. The private hangar complex at Meadow Lake is what's referred to as a through the fence operation. So the only hammer that the airport has as the airport manager is that if somebody doesn't want to be a member of the association, doesn't want to pay dues, wants to do whatever they want to with their private property, we have no say in it. But we can deny access to the runway complex through the fence. So that's the controversy we have. We do have many non-aeronautical activities at the airport. My concern with that, and the three examples that I gave to Ms. Harrington the other day, which are good ones, I think, the policy of the board that is as long as what they're doing in their hangar is legal, we won't complain about it. But if it starts to have a negative impact on the airport operations, then we have to file a complaint. So the three cases that were the genesis for this policy 12 years ago, a bumblebee tumbling gym for grade school kids. Very innocent activity. But the airport is very poorly marked. And the moms are driving around after dark in the wintertime and ending up on the runway. That's not a safe practice. A kickboxing gym. Landlord was renting the hangar to a bunch of guys that were setting up the ropes and doing their martial arts stuff. They knew there was a mile of straightaway runway out there to see how fast they could go. And then there were a couple of guys that rented one of the hangars for a weekend flea market. Same thing, the general public wandering around the hangar complex trying to find the right hangar ending up on the runway or head-to-head with an airplane on a taxiway. So we said, as a policy statement, you can do what you want to in your hangar, but as long as it doesn't have a negative effect on the airport, then we won't complain. But if you do have a negative effect on the airport, if your people are racing down Cessna Drive, if they're head-to-head to an airplane and arguing with the airplane over who has the right of way on this road or taxiway, because they're joint use, then we got a problem. The aeronautical use has to take precedent. Like they mentioned before, we have 70 to 80 airplanes on a waiting list for hangars. So I can't condone a non-aeronautical activity, but the Suns individually, specifically, have been really good members of the association. They've helped us with security on the airport. They've helped some of the people with experimental, the home-built airplanes in painting parts and lending tools or using some of their tooling to help. They've been good members. Does that create some more confusion? Or are there any questions I can answer?
No, generally, we don't ask questions from the public comment part, but if we need to, we can do that until I'm shut down, but I think we're okay. Or
On the technical side of it, Cessna Drive is a roadway. There are taxiway easements platted on both sides of Cessna Drive, but they have not been improved and are not contiguous. The easement is platted contiguous, but it's not in use that way. So Cessna Drive is both airplane and vehicular use, and it's maintained by the Meadow Lake Airport Association. We own the property halfway down to Taxiway Echo. We own the pavement on easements all the way down to the crosswind runway.
Can you just describe for me the signage, paint on the road, what are the directions? If I went there, I've never been to Meadow Lake Airport, I would have no idea that planes have right of way. What kind of signage, markings, delineation do you have to prevent the car versus plane
Good
problems?
question. When you come off of Judge Orr Road with the right turn onto Cessna Drive, you immediately see a fence, and there's a gate that's up during the daytime. A lot of the general public sees that gate, knows there's something different on the other side, turns around and leaves. But you can come through. From 7 in the morning till 7 at night, the gate is open. At night, you have to have a code to get the gate to open in order to come through. There's a sign there that says aircraft have the right of way. Beyond that, there are speed limit signs that say 25 miles an hour. There are 3 taxiways that cross Cessna Drive, and at the end of Cessna Drive is our crosswind runway. There's other aeronautical signage down there that says this is a runway. The general public would not know what those are. We do have a problem with people speeding on Cessna Drive, and there's no way that they could see an airplane and stop in time to avoid a collision. There's only been one accident that I'm aware of, and I don't have the specifics for that, but I've heard anecdotally that an airplane and a car had a problem on one of the taxiways, not on Cessna. Yes, sir.
Mr. Whitney?
Just real quick to piggyback on that, sir. So Cessna Drive is both a road and a taxiway, or at least portions of it are.
Yes, it's not officially a taxiway, but it's used as a
Used
taxiway.
there. So with your good example, if I come through that gate, there's a sign that says aircraft has a right of way. Is there a sign that says this road is also a taxiway?
No.
Okay, so I would likely be surprised if I came nose to nose with a plane on that road.
Could be. I mean, in my view, it's an airport. You shouldn't be surprised when there's an airplane in front of you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Elliott. Appreciate the comments. Next up, and I guess we haven't distinguished between people in favor and people in opposition, but we'll go ahead and figure it out between that. Since Mr. Elliott straddled the line for us, we'll share the road and taxiway.
My name's Dan Jaco. I'm also on the board at Meadow Lake Airport. When vote was called for this particular in favor of granting a variance or against, the vote was called early in the meeting. The Suns, well, they were there represented when the vote was called, which is kind of unusual because a lot of us wouldn't want to talk against their variance if they're present. But anyway, vote was called, and there were two of us that voted against, and we had no, opportunity to express why we voted against and take a second vote. But since then, I think there's others that would vote against this because it's an airport, and with all the problems we've had with complaints from other businesses on the airport, violating taxiways, being on the runway with, in a car or motorcycle. It's just airplanes and cars don't mix a lot of times. Anyway, Dave's clarified the taxiway of Cessna and her Cessna Drive and being a taxiway and a roadway. If AccuFix left the airport, there's another paint shop on the airport, so we wouldn't be without a place to go get things painted. And as far as other businesses, I think 90% of the businesses that are on the airport didn't have any, didn't say permission because they don't need permission to move in, but they just moved in, didn't let anybody know that they were opening up a business, and there they are on an airport operating a different type of business that's not compatible. And most of them, we've had complaints of vehicles parked in the taxiway, especially the transmission shop. Since my hangar is located close to that, I've constantly had problems with him having to move vehicles because you can't get by vehicles as he's parked close to the taxiway. As far as, I don't know any other airports that has body shop on the airport. I mean, you go to Colorado Springs Airport, you don't see a body shop on that airport. You go up to DIA, you don't see a body shop on that property or on the airport property. You go up to Centennial, there's no body shops, to my knowledge, on any of those airports. As far as AccuFix being a good neighbor, they've been an excellent neighbor, better than far above anybody else. You know, if there's anybody that's non-aviation use going to be permitted a variance for the airport, they would be the ones I would go for. But generally, I'm against any non-aviation businesses locating on the airport. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Jaco. Anyone else like to speak? Sir, please come on up.
Okay, I'm Michael Barr. I was the second no vote on approving these people because like Dan just said, airports are airports and that's all they should be. The question probably is not AccuFix now. My question to you is AccuFix later. Unfortunately, this airport was built by a bunch of good old boys and, you know, hey, I'm going to build a hangar and I'm going to store furniture in it and I'm going to do a little bit of car work. And it got away from us. It flat out got away from us. We all know the community is developing and that airport is developing. And not only that, housing areas around it are developing, which you guys are approving on a pretty regular basis. So my concern is not AccuFix now. What I would like to see, like you guys were heading in the right direction for, was can we say, okay, AccuFix, they're pretty good neighbors. They're still non-aviation, bottom line. Can you say, okay, we'll approve AccuFix only if they next month decide they want to book, go someplace else, find a better property, can we stop them right there? Or because you're going to give them a variance. Will that variance continue? And then we have 24, 27 other businesses there. I have a sneaking suspicion if you give total approval, you're going to have 24 more variance requests in front of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barr. Anyone else like to speak on this item? Ms. Parsons?
Chair, we do have a gentleman that has contacted Paula downtown, and I'm trying to get their contact information. They do want to speak on this item.
We'll give them a few minutes.
Okay, thank you.
And while we're doing that, I guess a little housekeeping. I think what I want to do is absolutely the applicant has the right to come back up and make some comments. At that time, if you could kind of catch us up on what other side conversations you've had, and if on that variance issue or limiting that variance, I think that's more than appropriate to come from the applicant. If you're willing to submit to some kind of limitation that we might want to consider. And other than that, then we still have the other item 3G. The variance of use for Templeton Gap was kind of a generic, big picture variance question. So when that comes around, we'll have staff kind of give us some of the specifics on that, and if there's any public comment, we'll take that at that time. But that one should be a fairly quick discussion, I think, given the amount of time we've spent on the issue between the two of them, this one in particular. So that's where we are, and we'll wait for the caller to come in. Can you pull it over onto the map side? So it's just not overlaying
I
the,
can't in OneDrive, but I'm going to use the overhead, sir. Blake, can I have the overhead? Is that still possible? Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay.
So hopefully you all can see the new notes depicted on the site plan that the condition of approval is referring to. So this.
Is there any way to zoom in more? Sorry.
Mm,
just a little small for me.
We
There-
can
oh,
do
there
one
we
at a time, sir.
Thank you.
We'll just have to do one at a time. The applicant would like to remain to have the ability to service those members of the Meadow Lake Airport Association to work on their vehicles. So we have written that extra language in there. And then I can move to the next condition, or these are not conditions, these are the allowed uses as depicted on the site plan. So. And then this note number 2 for allowed uses did not change.
Now, I'm looking at the resolution itself, and the condition, the condition that we have says additional aviation-related repair is allowed on the subject properties pursuant to the General Aviation Overlay District and the 1982 R4 Plan Development Zoning District. Doesn't say anything about the site plan or letter of intent or anything. So what condition do we need to, I don't know if we're missing a condition or if the language is not the one we usually have, because it seems like we usually have something that says in accordance with the site plan or the letter of intent. But the only condition on this refers to the General Aviation Overlay District and the R4 Plan Development Zoning District, period.
The site plan that is associated with the variance, that is what they can do. That is it. I mean, we can add an additional condition if you want over assurances, but it's not necessary because this is the allowed uses. If you go, oh, that is it. This is all they can do.
Okay, well,
they can't expand.
I may be mistaken, but generally we have some kind of language, a condition or something that refers to the letter of intent. Maybe I'm just
But this is
misremembering.
but this is a plat notice.
This is
It's not, yeah.
So remember how we had that earlier discussion, how we want to stop doing reference to letter of intents because it's so confusing, and we want to start getting applicants to be very specific on those site plans that are presented to the hearing bodies so we can limit them. So that is what we've done here.
And all I want to support that as much as possible. So if Ms. Sego says that this condition and the site plan here covers us, I'm content.
With all due respect, Mr. Chair, I don't know that it's up to me to make that determination. If you would like to
I'm
add-
only asking for your recommendation.
Yeah, if you would like to add a condition, and just as an example, I'm pulling up the conditions of approval that are on the variance of use for the 5935 Templeton Gap Road. It does have a condition of approval that says it's limited to a contractor's equipment yard, and it does refer to the letter of intent, but it also refers to the site plan. If you wanted to add a condition of approval to this variance of use that says that approval is limited to the uses depicted and described on the site development plan, you certainly can.
Okay.
Please don't refer to the letter of intent because remember their letter of intent has that very confusing 1981 R4 in it. And so it would be, it'd be back to ground one.
Well, the condition refers to R4.
Yes.
That's written in there. So,
Correct.
and I guess consistency is the hobgoblin of my feeble mind here, that the two should look kind of the same to keep me from getting confused, but it's not necessarily so.
We're not
My
taking-
colleagues,
We're not taking away those underlying land uses. If they should sell and somebody wants to come in and do aviation wing repair, they're allowed to do that under the R4 zoning district that they have now. If they wanted to come in and do a aircraft detail shop, they could do that. What they couldn't do is come in and start being a Jiffy Lube, because that is not allowed under the previous R4 as staff has interpreted that R4 zoning, and because the site plan doesn't allow that as well.
Mr. Whitney?
So I'm with you, Mr. Chair. So you're just looking for some linkage in a condition specifically to the allowable uses in the site plan?
I'm not suggesting we must have
No,
that.
but that's
It
what you're-
might,
yes.
we generally see something that refers to, if we make a change, if we put a condition on it, usually there's something in the resolution that draws people's attention to what we've done here. And I don't see,
Chairman
there
Bailey.
doesn't have to be that reference, but
I would just put we've had so much conversation on this morning. We really don't want any confusion. I think it's used to what you're seeing. I'm just giving my 2 cents, even though you didn't ask for it. I would just add the condition because it's been a large part of the conversation this morning that you're conditioning it based on the uses as depicted on the site plan. Let's not reference the letter of intent. My advice, for what it's worth, put that condition in there. And then as we move forward, next time we have a light agenda, maybe what staff will do is kind of go over just a general conversation about getting away from referencing the site or getting away from referencing the letter of intent, the site plan. That's more of a bigger conversation than we can certainly have with you. But I think you add the condition because it's a lot of conversation and then we're all on the same page.
I know that we rely on staff to give us the necessary conditions, and 95% of the time we're okay with that. Sometimes we add conditions, sometimes we modify conditions. That's okay, and that's our right. I just want to be certain that we're all okay here. So,
And I think you should just make sure that you're good with this language on this site plan, because the language that Carrie has brought up does become that condition. And so if you're not acceptable, if this language doesn't get to where you want it to be, then this is the language we would want to modify on the site plan.
And so my question would be that the reference to repair of vehicles as opposed to repair of aircraft is adequate to do what we want to do. I think that's okay, and it doesn't remove the underlying allowances. That's what I believe that's our intent. I'll open it to my colleagues if we think that we should have the condition, an additional condition as suggested by Ms. Harrington.
Mr. Chair, I would agree, just to make it simple, add a condition referencing the allowed uses on the site plan, just to make it easy and simple and that we understand that. But I would also want to talk about the condition of the special use being property owner specific and not going with the property. And how that would be handled in a condition or what, that it wouldn't be with the property, it would go with the owner. And if they would sell, the new owner would have to go through it again.
Right, and so the site plan note addresses the use issue, but we still have the issue that we'll come back to with the next item, which is that variance of use and making sure that either extends or does not, or run with the land or not, as we see fit. And I think the sense I'm getting is that in this case, as well as the next one, we think that it should be limited to the current owner. I don't want to put any words in anybody's mouth, but so I guess we need to have that, we would need to see that condition written, since we don't have it. We don't have an example on another one to look at.
Would it be appropriate to put that type of a condition on ownership on the site plan, or as a separate, maybe one condition that says refer to the site plan, second, refer to the owner?
It should be a condition of approval in your
Right.
resolution.
It should be in the resolution.
Not on the site plan.
Correct.
Right.
And we've done that before. We've added that condition before. So let's do this then. Ms. Ruiz, I promised to let you come back up and make any final comments that you have. And as I suggested, if the conditions that we're talking about are acceptable or not, that would help us to decide.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Trowbridge.
Did we get the person on the phone?
Oh, that's right. That's kind of what we were waiting for. I haven't, since nobody's chimed in. Did we get?
Chairman, no, they went through a different portal, a Citizen Connect portal, did not leave their full number. And so we are not able to contact them. But what we will do is we will make sure that we communicate back through Citizens Connect so that they know how to get comments on the record for the Board of County Commissioners meeting in the future. But at this point, we do not have their contact information and we can't dial them in.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. And we can't wait all day for this. We'll use the technology as best we can, but Ms. Ruiz, please.
Thank you. So first, I'll respond to the questions about conditions of approval. The condition that Carrie presented, if it becomes a condition or a note to the site plan, either way, whatever's determined, there's no objection, and Ms. Sun does like that condition as written. It would allow her to continue to operate her business. Having a condition that it only runs with the current property owner, that is a concern though. Obviously, when you have a business, your goal is to continue to grow that business so that it's successful. She knows that if her business is to grow, it may no longer be compatible with the airport, because if she starts to have more vehicles coming in and out that they're repairing, either the traffic may increase to a point where it's not compatible with the airport, or she may not be able to service the number of vehicles given that she only has 3 bays. So at that point, she would want to sell this location and move elsewhere. She purchased the property as a commercial business because that's how it's been operated for many years. It cannot hold an airplane at this point. And so financially, I know you can't take that into consideration for hardship, but you can for conditions. Financially, she would lose money if she were to sell it as just a hangar in the future. However, anybody that were to come in there after her, if she does sell, they would be limited to the same condition that Carrie just showed you. So it'd still be limited to governmental or only helping people within Meadow Lake Airport. So that's for the condition.
But doesn't the that underlying zone district allow for many of the uses, maybe not vehicle, but certainly aircraft, that would kind of mitigate that
Well,
impact of trying to sell to somebody else?
If you remember, there's the plat note. So part of the reason why we're going through the variance of use is there's a plat note that says that it's limited to airport hangars only, which doesn't include maintenance. So that's the conditions. Are there any questions about?
That's the conditions.
That's the
Okay.
conditions. And then just responding to the comments provided, I appreciated Mr. Elliott's comments. I think you heard from everyone that the AccuFix is a good neighbor. They have supported the airport. Nobody spoke that AccuFix, the operations of AccuFix, have any negative impact on the airport. You heard that there are other people within the airport area that are operating businesses that do cause problems. They specifically mentioned transmission shop. That is not her. So what you're looking at today is this particular application, the way that they function, the conditions or limitations on the site plan. And you heard from the public that they don't have any issues. So I understand that they might have a fear of other people within the airport, but that doesn't apply to this property.
Any questions for Ms. Ruiz or the applicant herself? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now the fun part. Now we get to discuss this and see where we are and how we want to proceed. Mr. Markowitz, you want to go first?
I think the note on the site plan is reasonable. I don't know if we need to tie it to the owner. Obviously, the Airport Association is appreciative of the current ownership, but I don't know if that's necessary as a condition of approval. So I would support it with the language that Ms. Parsons put in on the site plan.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Mr. Trowbridge?
I'll kind of second what Mr. Markowitz said. I don't see any reason to tie it to the owner. As Mr. Ruiz and the applicant just said, if they wanted to sell that business, we shouldn't have any problem with that type of business continuing there. It is private property, although it is within the confines of Meadow Lake. It's not Meadow Lake property, it's her property. And so we need to be cognizant of property rights here. So I don't agree with limiting it to this particular owner. But I'm okay. I'm okay with this. I'm okay with the language on the site plan.
So am I on both counts.
Okay. Any other thoughts down there, Mr. Carlson?
I'm likewise in agreement with the language on the that's been proposed, but I disagree on the tying, just letting it go with any owner that comes down the pike. I think there's a problem out at that airport. I think there's frankly a mess out there. I think tying it just to this owner is a way to help clean up that mess by looking at what the next owner wants to do with it. Yes, they're tied to this language that we've come up with, but we don't know who that person's going to be. Are they going to be a good neighbor, et cetera, et cetera. So I really think it needs to be tied to the current ownership.
Mr. Shibbles?
I would echo what Mr. Carlson said. I think the cat kind of got out of the bag 20-some years ago and sold hangars for any businesses that were available and wanted to buy the property, and to try and come back to the hangars and airplane use and stuff. Good tenant now, or good ownership now and stuff, and that's why I would agree to tie it to the ownership rather than the property.
Ms. Jack?
I would only caution us that that's not why we're here. We're here for a variance, not to clean up what's been going on for 20 years at Meadow Lake Airport.
And I guess I agree with that, in that it's not our cleaning up a mess, if there is one. Why should that fall on the applicant in this particular case? If this is just the first example or one of many, my concern would be to single out this applicant for a limitation like that when there are other things going on, and we should not look too broadly outside of this particular application. I think that the use is absolutely compatible. It's been there for a long time. There are other things like this. The hardship, I agree, falls within the limitations of our code, and that since we don't have a good definition for what's going on here, fixing it with a variance as the applicant has asked is entirely appropriate. So it meets all of our approval criteria. As Ms. Jack said, our purpose here is to look at this particular application, not necessarily to go back and address the problems that may exist in a particular neighborhood. That's not necessarily the applicant's problem. We've heard from everybody except Mr. Smith. If you have some comments, we'd take them now.
I agree with what you just said completely. It's not upon the applicant to be penalized for past sins. So the correction process should be elsewhere.
Well said. I think I agree. Okay. Unless there's other thoughts, other questions, we'll entertain a motion on this. And what I'm hearing, Mr. Trowbridge, go ahead.
Yeah, so we need a second condition now, right? To pick up the notation on the site plan?
Yeah. And
Is that correct?
do we have that language
Do
somewhere?
you have some language for us, Ms. Parsons?
Yes, Chairman, I do. The suggested condition of approval for adding a condition, which is number 2, uses are limited to the site plan submitted in support of the variance of use.
And do we want that to be a second condition or just an addition to the one that's there?
Added condition number 2, sir. So now there will be two
Two
conditions
conditions.
proposed.
And 2 notations.
Correct, sir.
Okay. Mr. Trowbridge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As regards agenda item 3C, VA 245, a variance of use for 8304 and 8308 Cessna Drive, I move for approval in accordance with the attached resolution with 2 conditions and 2 notations, where the second condition is as staff has provided to us regarding the note on the site plan, and that this item be forwarded to the Board of County Commissioners for their consideration.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Whitney, for the second. Any last discussion? Seeing none. Mr. Markowitz.
Aye.
Mr. Whitney.
Aye.
Ms. Jack.
Aye.
Mr. Trowbridge.
Aye.
Mr. Carlson.
Nay.
Mr. Shipples.
Nay.
And Mr. Smith.
Aye.
The chair also votes aye. Will recommend approval to the Board of County Commissioners with a vote of 6-2. Mr. Carlson, Mr. Shipples, do you want to add anything to your earlier comments?
Yeah, just that there's been discussion about it's not our job to clean it up. I disagree with that. Where else does it get cleaned up? I mean, this is where we should come to fix issues that are going on in the community. So I think it's our job to do that.
And I would just add, when the applicant bought the property, it was operating this way, but the assumption was that it was a legal use, and it wasn't. So the due diligence of buying the property, making sure it's zoned right, has the right accordances, applies to that and should be worked going forward. So that's why I thought that way.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on then, we have another item that was called up from the consent calendar, which is file number VA 243, the variance of use for 5935 Templeton Gap Road. We pulled this because our discussion about the variance kind of went a little bit beyond what I thought was appropriate for the consent calendar. So, but we've kind of illuminated that conversation or expanded on that conversation in the last one. So what I think we need to do here is have staff come up and address the specifics of this application, and then we'll decide how much more we need and see if there are any other questions from the commissioners.
Sure. Hi, Scott Weeks, staff planner. I can go through my presentation pretty quickly and hit on the highlights. And then what we've also done is crafted a condition of approval based on the previous discussion, and I included it as a last slide in this presentation. And so then we can kind of go through the 4 conditions as they read,
Very good.
possibly, if that works. Okay, so case VA 243, 5935 Templeton, gap variance of use. Let's see, how do I get this? Scott Weeks, staff planner. Ed as well on the project. If you're watching remotely and wish to participate and have not provided a name and reliable phone number, please email that information to pcdhearings@elpasoco.com. As again, a request by Great West Construction for the variance of use for the contractor's equipment yard. It's also going to include offices, storage within existing buildings that are on the site. Here's the criteria of approval that's listed in your packet, as well as in the land development code that we review against. The applicant, Wade DaCosta, Great West Construction in the audience, as well as MVE, Chuck Crum, also in the audience. Request is, again, the contractor's equipment yard. Surrounding zoning is A5. In the area in gray on this is City of Colorado Springs property. Wanted to kind of note that there's some also non-residential uses that are immediately adjacent to this property, being a church and a kennel. On one property is also an RV storage operation nearby. So the 5-acre parcel was created in 1942. It's a legal building lot. Home was built in 1964, and the 2 agricultural buildings that exist on the site that are going to be used for this use built in 2007. The applicant will continue to reside in the home that's located on the property, and intent is to run the business utilizing those existing accessory structures. A variance of use is required because a rural home occupation is a special use, would limit that approval to 5 years and limits the number of employees. And so the owner is looking to include and kind of expand that office use portion eventually and increase the number of employees over time. As Carrie mentioned in the last application, that variance of use runs with the land, so it does run with the property. Here are the dimensional standards, again, of the A5 district. And then to note that if approved, the applicant will have to go for a site development plan review and approval, and then we'll get into more details regarding the landscaping, the on-site improvements, whether impact fees are required, and gathering it at that time. So it's an urban residential place type, which includes both single-family, multifamily, but supporting uses that include office and commercial service. So you could, so really, what is being proposed as a contractor's equipment yard is pretty consistent with this place type in terms of the operations that are being proposed as part of that construction equipment yard use. It's in an area of change, which is a transition area. So you can kind of see the gradual change that's occurring with some of these large lot, 5-acre ag properties that are kind of changing. It's really kind of in an enclave area, actually, with surrounding cities. So you can see that there's a change occurring. So this is kind of in support of that. 54 neighbors were notified of the hearing. We received one comment that I think was in the packet regarding a concern of traffic congestion that might be generated with that use. We did not require a traffic impact study as part of this variance of use application. Based on the letter of intent, about 26 trips are being generated as part of this application, so it's well below the threshold needed for the traffic impact study. So here's where I just added a slide that listed the complete conditions of approval. The 3 of them are listed in the packet that you have. The 4th one was developed by the county attorney, which we did review with the owner applicant and are fine with as well. And so that reads, approval of the variance of use shall remain in effect only so long as the existing or future property owner resides on the property. If the property owner is not a natural person, the owner or an employee of the entity that owns the property shall reside on the property to fulfill this requirement.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. And I believe that addresses the concern. Let me just make sure that I check with the applicant. You may or may not come up and talk to us. If you're just okay with this, we'll move on, but welcome.
Mr. Chairman, Chuck Crum, MVE, representing here Great West Construction, and Wayne DeCosta is here as owner of that. We understand everything you said. We agree with the comment about adding that the owner continues to live there, and we've got that well written up, and it's in the language now that you're going to approve. And I don't have anything further unless you have questions of me, and if you don't, then I would recommend that you approve this and we move on. Thank you.
Any questions for the applicant? No, thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Any discussion?
Best speaker of the day.
I'll entertain a motion on this item.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Carlson.
Regarding agenda item 3G, file number VA243, variance of use for 5935 Templeton Gap Road, variance of use. I move for approval in accordance with the attached resolution with 4 conditions, the fourth being the one presented to us, which is drafted by the county attorney, and 3 notations and no requirement for water sufficiency, and that this item be forwarded to the Board of County Commissioners for their consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Carlson.
Second.
Mr. Smith, thank you for the second. Start down there with you, Mr. Smith, since your mic's still on.
Aye.
I'll call for the vote. Thank you. Mr. Shipples.
Aye.
Mr. Carlson.
Aye.
Mr. Trowbridge.
Aye.
Ms. Jack.
Aye.
Mr. Whitney.
Aye.
Mr. Markowitz.
Aye.
Chair also votes aye. Will recommend this to the Board of County Commissioners for their approval. Thank you. Now we're finally to the regular items on our agenda today. And we have a special district service plan for the Southern Colorado Rail Park Metropolitan Districts 1 through 3. We'll hear from Ms. Parsons. I will just make sure that staff here knows we've got a few commissioners that are going to have to run or may have to run at some point here in the next 45 minutes or so. So hopefully we'll get the normal, quick presentation from Ms. Parsons that we've all come to appreciate, and we'll go from there.
All right, Carrie Parsons, Planning and Community Development. The item before you is for the Southern Colorado Rail Park Metropolitan Districts, numbers 1 through 3. Myself as the reviewer with assistance from Shanna Smith at Finance, and of course, Ms. Sego as well. Anybody watching and you want to participate, please email and we will get you into the call queue. This is a request for a metropolitan district. The property is about just over 3,000 acres, and it is asking a debt authorization of about $430 million. 50 mills are proposed for commercial, 15 mills for the operations and maintenance of the district-owned properties, and there is no special purpose mill levy for covenant or fire protection. I'm going too fast, and my brain is going faster than me. Mandatory criteria for disapproval and discretionary criteria disapproval on the screen for you, as well as in your staff report packets. A little bit of history on this. The Board of County Commissioners did approve this in June of last year. This is a multi-regional effort to get an industrial park in southern El Paso County, west of I-25 and adjacent to Fort Carson. In short, the sketch plan depicted 4 phases of development. The critical components of this is that 1, it provides a secondary or redundant access to Fort Carson Military Base to support the mission by adding an additional spur from the existing CSU utility site to the very northeast corner of Fort Carson Military Base, as well as having new railway park services throughout this industrial park to promote economic development and job growth in El Paso County. It should be noted that when this did go through at the sketch plan stage, it was anticipated that the sketch plan area would be annexing into the city of Fountain. We always had a thought that the city of Colorado Springs would be the backup plan, and it looks like that is going to come to fruition, and that the city of Colorado Springs will ultimately be the provider here and the municipality taking this. Staff has worked with the city of Colorado Springs, and they have no concerns with the language in the service plan as it is today. Standard purposes of the district based on state statute on your screen. And here's a picture of the approved sketch plan or the industrial rail park and some of those common stakeholders that were involved since 2014 on this overall development. The mill levies, currently, we're looking at about, with a full mill levy of 65, about 102. Now, it is unknown if the city of Colorado Springs will enact additional mills or if they will do some type of agreement that really isn't relative to what's before you today. Tax impacts overall over 40 years, what's going to happen is the special ownership tax is going to be reduced by about $13.3 million. However, property tax for unincorporated El Paso County is going up to $139.8 million. That number will not change if it does annex into the city of Colorado Springs. El Paso County will still collect those property taxes. The project area is within the employment center. Certainly, the master plan does specifically call out this project as the rail yard Fort Carson and priority area development number 6. So the uses in the sketch plan are supported by the creation of this district, allowing for financing at low interest bonds. Therefore, it is consistent with the master plan place type for employment center. Summary of the application. So we would anticipate that the district public road design and construction, it would be anticipated that the municipality would take ownership and maintenance of those public roads. Of course, private roads would be retained by the districts. The district under the Title 32 can and will support, own, and maintain the crossings of the railroad, not the rail line itself. That is a separate district down the road that may occur. We would anticipate water supply, water supply including fire hydrants by the district, and of course drainage, detentions, open space, parkland, security services, and sanitation services for the industrial park. It is concluded that there is no other governmental entity that is capable of designing the necessary improvements nor constructing them. And the county currently doesn't have any availability to do so. Overall, the district's financial plan indicates a 17-year build-out ending in 2047 and hope to start construction in 2030. Looking at a 40-year total payoff, however, they are not exceeding the bond maximum of 30 years, but we would anticipate 3 bond issuances throughout that 40-year term. And I moved through that very fast as kind of requested. Any questions for staff, or would you like to hear from the applicant?
Mr. Markowitz.
Ms. Parsons, you mentioned that the language in here is acceptable to the city of Colorado Springs. The one that I want to make sure about is when we're talking about the power of eminent domain. So I just want to make sure that this language that we've got in here is transferable. This is exactly what they would want us to have, and it's on page 2 of 19 of this item.
Yes, so I'm going to cheat a little bit here and read out loud to satisfy Mr. Markovich. Condition number 1, if any portion of the land within the Southern Colorado Rail Park Metro District, number 1 through 3, annexes into the municipality, city council, or the appropriate body within the municipality shall be the authorizing entity in regard to eminent domain powers, increase to maximum mill levy or debt, and modification of the service plan as described in the conditions below. So that does cover that, and the city was content with that condition of approval and the language.
Okay, thank you.
I should say the city is content, not past tense.
Yes, Ms. Jack.
Carrie, Ray Nixon Power Plant and the city utilities, that's still in the county, right?
It is still in unincorporated El Paso County, although it is operated and owned by City of Colorado
Right.
Springs.
But most of their plants are still in the county, right?
Correct, including the WSEOs that have come before you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's hear from the applicant. I have a question because as you're coming up, you can hear what I'm saying. We're very familiar with these where we sell a bunch of houses and all the homeowners pay the taxes to do that. I'm just not sure where the $430 million comes from something that's not residential, but I'm sure that's going to be part of what I hear now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission. My name's Steve Mulliken. I'm a local attorney. I represent the Edward C. Levy Company, which is the applicant here. And I'm quite honestly very excited to be before you again. We were before you May 16th with our sketch plan, and we very much appreciate you approved it unanimously. And then the Board of County Commissioners did as well on June 4th. I want to, I said when we were before you with the sketch plan, soon we'll be back here again to talk to you about a Title 32 Metropolitan District, and here we are today. I'm going to try to be pretty quick, but I do want to give you kind of a little bit of a refresher on the project. But before I start that, I want to publicly thank Carrie Parsons and the county staff and Megan. They've been extremely professional to deal with. It's been a pleasure working with them. They've worked hard. This is not your standard small lot subdivision. So I wanted to say that they've been great. Carrie gave you a 100-mile-an-hour quick overview. I want to just expand on that and refresh you just a little bit. We are dealing with a big site. It's a mega site, 3,100 acres, located to the east of Clear Spring Ranch. That's the Nixon Power Plant property, and to the west of Fort Carson. So we're sandwiched between them, 3,100 acres of undeveloped ground right now. We have a small sand and gravel mining operation in the northeast corner, but basically it's raw ground. We've been proceeding with this project as a public-private partnership since 2018. There's been a memorandum of understanding, which included El Paso County as one partner, City of Colorado Springs, City of Fountain, the Chamber and EDC, and the Levy Company, my client, as the private part of that public-private partnership. We have an MOU in place. It established an oversight committee, which has been a great benefit to us, and we've had great political leadership on that, including from the county, Commissioner Gonzalez, who's been our longest-serving member, but we also have Sharon Thompson from the City of Fountain. We have Councilmember Helms representing the City of Colorado Springs, and Dave Donaldson representing Colorado Springs Utilities. It's been a labor of love, but it's been a great help to us to have kind of that leadership there. We have a negotiated trackage agreement with the City of Colorado Springs, signed in May of a year ago. And that gives us the right to come in over the existing rail bridge and the existing rail tracks that go into the Nixon Power Plant, and then take a spur off that, run the rest of the way across Clear Spring Ranch, the Nixon Power Plant property, to the Levy property boundary. And then our first phase of the project is to run the rail spur to the boundary of Fort Carson. You may remember when we were here last time, Fort Carson has an existing rail access on the north end of the post. Dead ends kind of at where South Academy dead ends. It's publicly exposed. It's designed for small trains, where today you only get unit trains, 100-car trains. Has to wind through a neighborhood as they load it, and then ultimately get to the Kelker Junctions, where it then gets reassembled. It's a disaster, but the main thing, there's 7 critical points of failure along that route, where anybody with an RPG could take out 1/10 of our fighting force's ability to deploy. Our first mission is to get that new second rail access to Fort Carson. That'll hopefully make them a little bit more BRAC-proof. But in addition to helping Fort Carson, this project is estimated to create 7,700 new jobs and hopefully manufacturing jobs. The genesis of this was 10 years ago when Jeff Green, when he was your county administrator, asked the question, how do we create jobs here in El Paso County? He commissioned a study, engaged Gary Barber. Gary is with us, I think, still. Good. Gary Barber and his partner to do the study, and that was let's look at it. We could have a rail park at this site. It's a big site. And so we've been pursuing that. I'm terribly excited about this because this is really a perfect site for manufacturing. It has 2 perfect neighbors. Usually, you try to put a manufacturing site by a single-family residential development, you would have 400 people in here, right? You'd never get it done. We have two neighbors. One is the power plant, perfect. The other is Fort Carson. And interestingly, this site is not visible from I-25. So I've been doing land use for a number of years. You can't find a better situation. We have discussed with site selection experts. Usually when a big company wants to find a new site, they engage site selection experts, and they tell us that the biggest factor, two big factors, one is juice today, electricity, but the other is there a workforce? We have the very unique situation here where from Fort Carson alone, each month 400 soldiers leave military service. 65% want to stay here if they can get a job. So we have a workforce of people that, you know, they already have skills. They already understand chain of command. They already understand how to be dependable. And on top of that, we have a partnership, if you will, with Pikes Peak State College. Lance Bolton, their president, great guy. He is poised and ready. When we bring a manufacturer to find out what skills they need, and Pikes Peak State College will tailor courses to provide those skills needed by manufacturing. So we have, one will help veterans with this, but we've got a great workforce. All that is important, I think. One of the critical problems we've had locally, I think, is that we're too dependent on the military and on the government. We need to diversify. This site will become a second economic engine and help us diversify the economy. It's very exciting. So that's a refresher. I talked last time about why we were going to need a Title 32 district. Let me just briefly remind you. Almost all developments today put together metropolitan districts to fund infrastructure. Governments don't do that. I'm not being critical, but you don't have a budget for that. I'm telling the people that know more about that than I know. So you do it by selling double tax exempt bonds. We have a raw ground site. We've engaged, I think, the premier bond experts with Piper Sandler. We're estimating that our costs for infrastructure will be about $269 million. It's a pretty rough estimate, but it is a big number. The only way to fund that reasonably is through sale of bonds, where you spread those upfront capital costs over 30 years of bond payments. So that's one, but probably to me, as an attorney trying to be responsible for this project, we have strong long-term commitments to maintain the rail lines, to maintain security of the site, including security of the power plant site. And we've committed to that in a trackage agreement. When you have long-term maintenance obligations, from my experience, the only way to do them and do them right is with a metropolitan district. It's a quasi-governmental entity. It has taxing power, and if you want to make sure you have the revenue, you do it that way. So that's the main reason. It may also help us with grants in the future. So that's the main need for it. I am not an expert on Title 32 metropolitan districts, but our position is get the best guys you can to do the job. And I get the pleasure today to introduce to you Sean Allen from White Bear and Ankley. They are, I think, the premier metropolitan district in the state. I've had the pleasure of working with the firm and working with Sean on private projects for a number of years. I also was on the initial advisory committee of the Board of County Commissioners for your long-term transportation impact fee program, which required setting up metro districts, and the county engaged this firm. But anyway, I've worked with Sean. He's an extremely bright, extremely conscientious and careful attorney. He's a perfect one. And if you have questions, he's ready to walk you through a PowerPoint on that, or take questions, whichever you prefer. But let me introduce Sean Allen, because he knows this stuff better than I do. Sean?
Briefly, Sean Allen on behalf of the applicants. To get to your question, so you asked, $430 million, no houses, how are you going to support that? There's about 5.6 million square foot of commercial. The Piper Sandler, they've basically taken that much square footage, estimated values of what that would be, extrapolate that out, and then they would be able to support in that financing plan about 410 million in par, with the assumptions of mill levy within the limitations of the service plan of 5% interest rates. As those adjust, if less millage, interest rate goes up, obviously the par amount of that would come down, but still operating within that. So it's that commercial square footage rooftops. As that develops, there's your tax base to support in the series of debts, and we have 3 series. The first one, all of it is new money. It's the very first issuance. And then they have 5 years later, you refund that and then a little extra new money. 5 years after that, refund again, extra new money, and then you have your total project funds, your total par, and we're within that. That's how we came up with that 430, is to what do we need to net? And that net of those new monies, about 260 million, if everything falls into place, on a $269 million estimate. So that's about 87%. So that's pretty good in terms of what will this district, will it only be supporting 10% of the cost, 100% of the cost? It's if things pan out, the development happens, the rooftops go up, then we have a pretty good percentage of coverage of that infrastructure financed by the districts. And I do have a slide presentation, but Carrie did such a good job. It would be a lot of repeats, but our end was there are certain criteria you have to have. Is there a need? Yes, we have a substantial need for infrastructure. Is there any local government entity stepping forward to say, here's a check for $269 million? No, there's not. If this develops, would the land within there be able to support what they're proposing, the services for operations and maintenance, servicing of that debt? Yes, it was. So those particular Title 32 criteria, we have those. We have those in there. We feel we have met those. The rest of the service plan is, what does it have to contain? We're following your model. We're not asking to go outside of the model of the county. So your model complies with statute and your own governmental requirements. We're following that model, so we follow that as well. So.
We have some questions for Mr. Allen. I don't want to keep you from your presentation, but at the same time, let's address the couple things that we may have. Mr. Carlson.
I'm looking at the phasing plan there and just wondering who pays for some of that stuff. Like phase 1 specifically, it's just a rail line. And how does the Metro District generate any income from that in order to pay for that? I mean, is it just a issue of bonds and that goes from there?
It's a great question. The Metro District, quite honestly, will not pay for the rail line. It can pay for crossings, but the rail line will be funded either privately by our client or in conjunction with grants. It's really serving Fort Carson initially, and we actually have a grant pending right now called a Chrissy grant, and we're hoping we'll get it, but one way or the other, it'll get paid for. So we got to do it.
And then those other phases there, it looks like they certainly justify, they would take care of their own paying for their own infrastructure. But that phase 4, I guess, does anything get done up there until it actually gets started construction? In other words, infrastructure up there or not?
Probably not. The geography, that last phase 4 is where our current mining operation is. It's about 70% completed, with a lot of the reclamation completed. So, but that's a bluff. Basically, it'll be dropped a little bit through the mining, but it will not be rail served property. It'll be industrial property, but not rail served. And at that time, we do have the issuance of, we have 2 different districts in part for that, because the first one will be really funding the initial rail served park, and that last one, they'll benefit from infrastructure funding, but it
coming
won't
up
happen.
to the site, yeah.
Yeah, it won't happen for a while.
Great, thanks.
Mr. Trowbridge.
Yeah, I kind of had similar questions, and maybe you'll cover this in your presentation. As Mr. Bailey pointed out earlier, normally these are residential, and we kind of understand, what the typical home cost is and kind of what the underlying assumptions are for how you'll build up across phases and pay the bond back. I couldn't quite find that in here, but there are a lot of exhibits, so I could have missed it. But as Mr. Carlson said, you've got 4 different phases, but I couldn't find out, what you were looking at in terms of the build out of the businesses, maybe the mix, and what revenues you were expecting to get in step with your phasing development and how that will fund the repayment of the bonds. I just wanted to kind of understand it in a big picture kind of way. So if you have that, I'll be happy to wait for the presentation, but.
Let me try to take a first cut at that, then I may turn over to Sean. First of all, this is kind of a different situation. You're normally seeing a residential development that is phased, and you probably have an idea, this is phase one, and this, we're going to get this much built out, this many rooftops. We quite honestly are in some ways a safer and better situation because normally I've listened to county commissioners, city council members, planning commissioners concerned about metro districts, is it going to break the back of the homeowner? Here, we're not going to have any homeowners. I actually came up with a thought, should we have one small area, maybe affordable housing on this? I mean, I'd be selling a bill of goods to tell somebody you want to have your house overlooking this industrial rail park and listening to Fort Carson shooting their guns. I mean, it's not designed for residential. So it's a safer thing. You're going to have large, sophisticated users. We have some interest right now with maybe a 300 to 1,000 acre user. So they are sophisticated. They know it. And quite honestly, when the financial projections were done by Piper Sandler, they are estimating, they used a number of $225 a square foot for the value of these industrial properties. Usually you see them at higher than that, and that is, in my opinion, an extremely conservative number. So as you bring in your first manufacturer, the assessed value of the property goes up as a result of it. They pay tax based on the current value, their assessed value. And I'll share with you, we had a data center that was interested, and we're not going to do a data center. I have a really negative attitude toward data centers, which has changed. I thought they don't create jobs. They suck up a lot of juice. I would rather want one of those. Well, I've now realized that's the brain trust, and we probably ought to have the brain in the backyard close to us, not overseas somewhere. So we're going to have to figure that out. But at any rate, we penciled that just with the assessed value from the data center. We probably could almost fund our first phase. So it does work, and that's how it works progressively. You're used to seeing rooftop on top of rooftop, then we get enough and we can fund phase one. We don't know who our first user will be, but we know it'll likely be very big and the assessed value will support it. And we're relying on Piper Sandler, who do this all the time, and they say that this park will support the amount of expense we have. As far as the infrastructure, and I'm not sure we did it, it's really the same type of infrastructure that you do for a residential development. You got to put water lines in, sewer lines in, electric lines, and roads. That's what we'll be paying for. In our O&M, we're also going to be paying for security. So it's similar stuff, but a little bit heavier duty. Sean, did I do that?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
That number you put out, the $225 per square foot, that's on the improvements that they would build, correct?
Yes, sir. So
Okay.
if you
Not on the
imagine
land.
a manufacturing facility, you can't build a house today for $225 a foot.
Right,
So
right.
I think it's very conservative.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Other questions? Yeah, Ms. Jack, go ahead.
So, Steve, the industrial park, is there anywhere that it is cited by Colorado Springs? If you go to Colorado Springs to annex it, would it be a flagpole?
Very astute question. Probably not. The annexation statute says your contiguity will not be disrupted or killed because you have an intervening governmental public lands, and that's Fort Carson. So that's probably how it'll get done. We have met with the city of Colorado Springs, and we're working in that direction right now, as Carrie said. So I think ultimately this project will get annexed into Colorado Springs, and they'll be the utility provider for us, so which is very helpful.
But Fort Carson is not the city of Colorado Springs.
No, what the statute says is your contiguity will not be, it won't be, you won't be disadvantaged because between the city municipality and your property, there's an intervening public land, and that's Fort
Gotcha.
Carson.
Okay, thanks.
That's how we're doing it.
Okay, I'm looking at the room and I'm not sure we have a need to go through anything else. So thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation. I think I'll entertain a motion, but
Thank you
I
very much.
doubt that I will be surprised with the, with what I hear. So thank you very much. Ms. Jack, thank you.
I'll muddle through this. Mr. Chair, with regards to agenda item 5A, file number ID 244 for a special district service plan, Southern Colorado Rail Park, Metropolitan District numbers 3. I move for approval with 7 conditions and 1 notation, and with the finding for sufficiency of water quality and quantity and dependability not applicable. We should forward this to the Board of County Commissioners for their consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Jack.
Second.
Second from Mr. Trowbridge. Thank you. We'll start down it with Mr. Smith again.
Aye.
Mr. Shipples.
Aye.
Mr. Carlson.
Aye.
Mr. Trowbridge.
Aye.
Ms. Jack.
Aye.
Mr. Whitney.
Aye.
And Mr. Markowitz.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, so we'll recommend this to the Board of County Commissioners for their approval. Thank you all for your patience and your participation here today. We have one more non-action item, and I'll go to Mr. Trowbridge first.
I was going to ask, Mr. Chair, given that several of us need to depart, could we ask staff, if it's not too big an imposition, to move the information item to a subsequent meeting so that more of us could hear it?
Yeah.
Is there any objection to that?
Since it is a non-action item, I thought we would have that flexibility. And so, I agree. Let's call it a day right now, and you guys work it in when you can. It's frankly, the only reason I wanted to come here today was to hear that.
Well, I'm also looking for, as you and I were both on
So
the,
you're on the hook.
yeah, so.
Okay. But yes, let's get it back on the calendar either next time or when it works. And unless there's anything else from staff, Mr. Kilgore, you're looking expectantly. No, you don't want to say anything. Then we're adjourned for today, and we will see you in 2 weeks. Thank you. Thank you.